で安心したよ。
Hello, this is Eden with HelixxVR. Today I'll be taking a look at Megadimension Neptunia VIIR by Idea Factory and Compile Heart. Mostly at the VR mode, which is compatible with HTC Vive, Oculus Rift and the PSVR. First off, this is not a VR game as such. This is a remake and much improved version of Megadimension Neptunia VII, which is a well-reviewed JRPG with some additional VR aspects. I'll speak very briefly about the non-VR side of the game first to give some context. It's a turn-based JRPG with a lot of humour. For those who aren't familiar, JRPGs, or Japanese RPGs, are a popular subgenre of RPG games and include games like Final Fantasy or Kingdom Hearts. This one, however, is a bit different than those games. The main character is basically a goofball who's obsessed with gaming and acts like a perverted old man at times, despite appearing to be a young woman. She's surrounded by other characters who all have their own similar quirks. The game is very strongly aimed towards anime fans, and the series has somewhat of a cult following, with more than 10 games released and an animated series. It's well known for adult humour, meta jokes, gaming references, fan service such as characters shown in bikinis, and outright fourth wall breaking jokes. Personally, I enjoy JRPGs, and it's genuinely very funny at times. The character interactions really sell the game to me. If this is the sort of game you enjoy, it's well worth giving it a shot whether you own VR or not. It's aimed at a very specific audience, so be warned. That said, we are a VR channel, so that's what this video is about. If you don't have VR, however, I will mention that despite being advertised as VR scenes, you can view these on your monitor too, even if you don't get quite the same impact. All VR scenes take place within the player room. The player room is a customizable room which you can change some of the objects in. New objects can be unlocked by playing through the VR scenes. The player room is meant to represent the room that you're playing the game in. The VR scenes are not really related to the story of the game, and completely break the fourth wall. The characters outright refer to you as the player. The idea behind the VR scenes seems to be about you, the player, being able to be face to face with the characters and interacting with them. You can see VR scenes involving the foremost well-known characters of the series, as well as an alternate adult version of Neptune here. All of these scenes can be played in either English or Japanese language. You can unlock VR scenes by completing chapters of the regular part of the game. The way this worked was a little odd. As a VR scene for adult Neptune unlocked in the story, I put the VR headset on and went through it. I then took the VR headset off to continue playing on the monitor. The other characters' VR scenes were ones accessed separately from the menu. To play the VR scenes, motion controllers were not supported, or needed really. It's possible to play with a gamepad or keyboard and mouse. I'd recommend a gamepad just as the rest of the game is easy to play with one, and you only really need it to get into the VR scene. The interactions with the characters were all head controlled. Either you looked at something the character indicated, or you nodded yes or shook your head no to answer character questions, and their dialogue would change based on your answer. There were a few unfortunate issues I found with the VR scenes in the games, however. Now, for context, I'm playing the game on an i7 5820K with a GTX 1080 and 16GB of RAM. I can run pretty much any VR game. I still got over 40% reprojection when playing the VR scenes, and some pretty bad stuttering at times when turning my head. That's worse performance than I get trying to run any other released VR game I've played. This is quite surprising, as the graphics weren't amazing. It seems like a lot of similar games have this issue. Up close, character models looked good enough, but even at a slight distance they started to look somewhat fuzzy. The final issue I had could be avoided somewhat. There seems to be no way to censor the view in-game. If I and the VR headset weren't in the correct position at the start of the game, the view could end up looking tilted, too high, too low, or so on. To sum up my views on the game, personally I felt like the VR scenes are very much a nice extra and definitely something that fans of the series would enjoy, but they're not really up to what we expect from a VR game. I don't believe that the casual player would be too bothered, however, as the scenes could be skipped or just watched on the monitor. They don't really add much. Now, despite sounding fairly negative, I actually do recommend the game to people who enjoy the genre. While the VR implementation is minimal and lacking in what there is, the game itself is actually incredibly funny, and the battle system is well done. While there's probably about a few hours of VR content, there's over 30 hours to actually play through the main game, and far more for optional content. The series as a whole seems to go on sale fairly often, so I'd probably keep an eye out for a sale if you're interested. Once again, this was Eden from HelixxVR. If you'd like to see more content like this, please remember to hit that alert button, like and subscribe.
ピンポイントですっごいこだわってる部分があって、いつも感心させられるんだよね。